Hello, two people in a stream watching now. Sorry it's been such a disappointment. It was supposed to have actually been on Aaron Amihud's stream, but he couldn't he couldn't make it work without the echo. That was very distracting. He didn't hear an echo, but I did. So that was impossible. I scheduled one stream and posted him the link. He said it didn't work. I posted a second one and he still said it didn't work. So here we are. I still have quite a few things to say. I could tell you about the latest developments between Jay and I. So despite what he said about caring, about our friendship and his affection and, shit like that, it seems he can't or won't answer a question that I keep asking him because it's against his principles. He won't answer a very simple question to which he asserted a very strong opinion, which is that he thought Connops won the argument against John Vance. Earlier on his stream, he said he actually admitted that he couldn't remember what it was all about, but he was still absolutely sure that Connops won the debate. And I said it was I think I've made it clear enough that I would like him to give a reason. What's so hard about that? You hear a debate or an argument, somebody asks you, what was it about? And it's against your principles to say what it was. You don't have to give a reason. And to make sure that you understand what the argument was about, you should at least be able to explain what you thought Party A was saying and what Party B was saying. He refuses. Jay Walker actually refuses to say what he thought the argument was about, against his fucking principles. What principles has he got? What principles has he got? It's laughable, isn't it? He has a principle of not answering questions, of not giving reasons. I would have thought it was a very reasonable thing to say, oh, well, since you think debater A won the argument against debater B, what do you think the argument was about? Not saying, fuck off, he says, in so many words. And then he can't say what the argument was. Then he can't say who said what. And it's against his principles to give a reason. So this is what I'm dealing with. Forget Jen for rigging her rules against me. You would expect her to do that and laugh about it and delight in it. But I understand. But to have one of my close associates who says, "Ooh, I like you so much, you're so admirable," and all that shit, and he won't even tell me the answer to a simple question. He can't even listen to the argument again and tell me what it was all about because he's too fucking lazy or too fucking stupid. I don't know. But this is what you're dealing with. People who don't care. He doesn't care who actually won the argument. He's just happy to say whatever Connops says he wins because I agree with the position of Connops. What is Connops's position? We can say very clearly that he has no intention of fathering legitimate children. No intention whatsoever. He doesn't want to marry some woman and make a mother of her or pay for her children. He doesn't want to do that. And Jay supports him. Connops doesn't want any changes in his lifetime because it would be too disruptive to his occupation of having sex with women he's not married to. Jay says, well, Jay basically aligns himself behind such people. So whatever Connops says goes. And because Connops says it in an educated accent, he thinks John must have lost the argument. He refuses to go back to listen to the argument, to say, well, he might have a point here or there. All he says is impressions. Under his impression, Connops won the debate. What was it about? Who knows? Who cares? So after all the repeated questions, it's still... Let me just read out his email to me. Claire, I'm sorry you feel this way. There's obviously nothing I can do about it. As you know, I'm not the type of guy who will be blackmailed. If I were to bend to your demands, I am going against my principles. What fucking principles? We have spoken about the nastiest thing a person can do is to get a person to do this. Do fucking what? Answer a simple question. So, I'm happy to let you go. We have a thing which is about not going where we are not wanted. It works. There we are. There we are. Now, what was his previous answer? Perhaps it will be more logical to go in chronological order. Please do not question my morals and sanity regarding our friendship. It is insulting that your betraying our friendship is dependent on me being weak and changing my views in order to fit in with you, stupid emotional woman. And this was in response to my message saying, so you are absolutely refusing to tell me why you think Connops won the debate against John, even as you pretend you care about our friendship. This is a shit I have to deal with. Hi Claire, I've already done this. More shit. And then the answer finally, then John flapped and lost, and therefore lost. Connops stayed cool and won. And I said, you're still not getting it, are you? Answer my questions. What were Connops and John arguing about? 2. What was John's argument? 3. What was Connops' argument? 4. Who used the winning argument? 5. Why was it the winning argument? So there we have it. I suppose the kindest thing to think is that he doesn't understand my questions. Doesn't understand it. Fancy that. He could just say, well, I don't know what you want from me, Claire. I think he's just too lazy to go back over it. So, this is a kind of... Well, you see, the thing about Jay is that he represents most people who don't give a damn about the arguments. He doesn't care about the rules either. So if somebody were to rig the rules against someone, even someone he says he cares about, it doesn't matter. It's stupid to care. So the government could rig the rules against the peasants, but you'll say, oh, it doesn't matter. It's stupid to care. You should just pretend you don't care as they kick you in the face and stamp on your head. You should pretend not to care. And that's how you win. I don't expect someone like him to know what a valid argument is. What is a valid argument? Can anybody answer at all? Does someone like Church of Entropy care about what a valid argument is? What about her moderator? What about Duvid? What about Gandalf? What about Culture Bearer? I think they're graduates, but they don't get it about a valid argument. They don't care. And you know what? They can pretend that they don't care what a valid argument is. Now, if you were to go to the arguments of the debate, you might like to, but you can't be bothered. There's a transcript. I've actually done it all specially for you, but no one will read it. No one will read the transcript of an argument that nobody cares about. So I guess all the rules that Jennifer Shaw says she cares about is like nothing at all. Who cares what a valid argument, as long as she can rig the rules against me? But maybe you can see what I mean a little bit more if I read to you what she actually says. Or perhaps I should explain to you what a valid argument is. Maybe that would be a more useful exercise. What was the wig Nat shit show last night, Brundlefly? No, I didn't. I just don't see any point. Valid argument. I was going to go through the motions of explaining that. Because I don't think Jen gets what a valid argument is. And nobody who supports her cares either. So this is what I'm dealing with people who just don't give a damn about truth, logic, or morality. Who cares about being logical as long as our emotions push us in one way, even if it is off a cliff? Here's an example: valid versus invalid. We've seen valid arguments before. Recall the Tom Cruise argument. It says, okay, for example, 1. All actors are robots. Tom Cruise is an actor, therefore, Tom Cruise is a robot. This is an example of a valid argument. An argument is valid if it has the following hypothetical or conditional property. If all the premises are true, then the conclusion cannot be false. In this case, we know that, in fact, the first premise is false. Not all actors are robots, but the argument is still valid because if the premises were true, it would be impossible for the conclusion to be false. In other words, in a hypothetical world where all actors are robots and Tom Cruise also happens to be an actor, then it is logically impossible for Tom Cruise not to be a robot. That is the distinctive property of this argument that we're pointing to when we call it valid. That it's logically impossible for the premises to be true and the conclusion false. Or to put it another way, the truth of the premises guarantees the truth of the conclusion. There are all different ways of saying the same thing. Validity is the strongest possible logical glue you can have between premises and conclusion. Here is an example of an invalid argument. 1. All actors are robots. 2. Tom Cruise is a robot. Therefore, Tom Cruise is an actor. The first premise is the same. All actors are robots, but the second premise is different. Instead of assuming Tom Cruise is an actor, we're assuming that Tom Cruise is a robot. Now, if these premises were both true, does it follow that Tom Cruise has to be an actor? No, it does not follow. It would only follow if we said that only actors are robots, but the first premise doesn't say that. I think this will probably be a bit too complicated for the vegetables on the morons. Okay, so Brundle, they're talking about violence. I mean, really, I don't want anything to do with that other than to say that I don't support violence. But if violence were being contemplated, then all the peaceful ways have to be gone through first. Because it would be stupid to say that you would never commit violence because that's carte blanche for people to kick you around, right? But have we gone through the motions of doing all we can to get our way using peaceful means? I don't think so. And you know what? The people who are most obstructive are, in fact, people supposedly on the same side. The reason why Jen rigged the rules against me was because she didn't want, well, obviously she wanted to humiliate me publicly so she could say how clever she was being and how unanimous the opinion that I had lost the argument was. So although we're supposed to be on the same side technically, she's obviously not going to be cooperative, and her entire project is to lie about me, rig the rules against me, and then, well, that's obviously her view and her policy because, well, I can understand that she doesn't like my ideas and she having no particular sense of justice or even care about it. That's the thing. She doesn't care whether the rules are fair as long as she gets to rig them and articulate them and set them and impose them and get her echo chamber to support them. So she can go through the motions of allowing me on a stream and then getting everyone to talk over me and then saying, oh well, I did the best. I let her on the show. She had a time to say what she wanted to say, and well, that's it. She lost the debate. But what is a valid argument? A valid argument, I'll try to make it easy for you, is something that makes sense. So we can go through her ridiculous arguments, sentence by sentence. I know it will bore you to death because none of you care about what a valid argument is. You just don't care as long as you get your way. This is how it starts. I will be presenting the position that God is impersonal. That's fair enough. That's a perfectly truthful statement. She goes on to say, I will first explain the importance of the God concept in social engineering. Then I will demonstrate the existence of an impersonal God. And finally, argue in favor of the effects of the belief in an impersonal God. Well, these are promises. Let's see if she does that. The dawn of human civilization is indistinguishable from the advent of theocracy. I don't know what that means, but I wasn't given a chance to question her. That is, all human cultures have historically had some type of religion along with precipitating shared worldviews and ideological convergence. So she's basically saying, fair enough, all groups have a religion or a narrative. All right, I'm prepared to go with that. Religion gives shared ideals to a people, and the highest among is that of God. Yes, I suppose you have to worship a particular God if you're said to, and it can be a tribal religion or a universal God. Thus, a civilization's view of God is largely determinative of its ultimate destiny. Well, I'm afraid I don't know what that means. What is ultimate destiny? In general, the God concept ties together the idea of a supreme source of creation. Life and consciousness with the idea of anthropomorphism, which is the attribution of human qualities to God. Oh dear. We have to break it down. Okay, in general, the God concept has together the idea of a supreme source of creation. So I guess she's saying God is the creator of creation and also the giver of life and our consciousness. I don't know what she means by with the idea of anthropomorphism. Anthropomorphism means that you invest human qualities to God. The concept of a personal God thus necessarily represents some degree of anthropomorphism within a religion. I'm not sure what that means. The qualities of God express the highest sociological ideals, whether people are aware of it or not. I don't know what she means by sociological ideals. They strive to emulate the qualities of the supreme personality of God. I don't know what she means either. This is why Hindus imitate the personality of Krishna and Christians imitate the personality of Jesus. Do they do that? I don't know. There is nothing beyond God, and so the God ideal is the most important sociological ideal because it constrains the range of human achievement. I don't know what that means. If God can be proven to exist, this will certainly strengthen people's faith in God. But this is the nature of faith is that we don't know if God exists. So we make a decision. We choose to believe in him or we choose not to believe in him. She goes on to say, thus we will attempt to prove the existence of the impersonal God. Well, that's impossible. In order to prove such a thing, we must first define what exactly we mean by God and thereby determine what entity, if any, meets these criteria. I don't know what that means. We assert that God must be the uncreated creator of all things, undisturbed and eternal as well as perfect. Okay, well, that's if the creator of the creation is God, well, fair enough. That's what the Abrahamic faith believe also. I can go with that. We will now show how defining God as equal to the universe satisfies these criteria by equating guide to the universe, the laws of God, therefore become the laws of physics. Okay, I have to read that again. We will now show how defining God as equal to the universe satisfies these criteria by equating guide to the universe, the laws of God, therefore become the laws of physics. I think she's trying to say that if God created the universe, he also determined the laws of physics. Okay, I'm prepared to go with that. We start off with the uncreated. The universe is itself uncreated because the universe contains mass, and mass is subject to the law of conservation. Oh, I don't know. I don't know. Whatever mass exists within our universe must be uncreated, for if it were created, it would require a creator, and we have no evidence for such. I don't know what this means. I still don't. Thus, the totality of the mass and the universe is uncreated, and therefore so is God. I don't know what that means. God is the creator of all things because through God's immutable laws, the universe creates all observable things. The laws of the universe, being God's laws, certainly exist. So basically, she later admits this anyway, that because the universe exists, God exists. The laws of chemistry and physics predict the changes observed in all matter. Yes, so what? Thus, all things that are observable because of God's laws. For instance, the mechanism of star formation mentioned in the article displayed can be demonstrated to be a confluence of the laws of uncertainty and gravity. I don't know what that means. God's laws, nothing is truly created or destroyed. Really? The universe and its laws are uncreated, and the laws of the universe dictate the procession of all things that emerge within the universe. Don't know what that means. So, we have proven that God is the creator of all things in the universe because all things created in the universe are changes to the mass distribution of the universe because the mass itself is conserved. I don't know what that means. Now we will prove that God is eternal and unchanging due to the conservation of mass. The mass in the universe cannot be destroyed, and so the mass comprising the universe is eternal. The periodic table does not change with time, and so is also eternal. But there was a time before the periodic table was invented, Jen, so it can't be eternal. Therefore, God is eternal. Now we will prove that God is perfect. We have to define what perfect means. First off, and so I use the quality of symmetry, the quantum mechanical periodic table. The smallest space-time event is certainly symmetric and so satisfies this criterion since humans find symmetry to be beautiful. The periodic table must also be beautiful because it is symmetry. Thus, we have shown the proof of God's perfection. Have we? Because the periodic table exists, God exists? Really? Thus, we have shown that an impersonal God can be demonstrated to exist. If the moderator, Erica, ever understood that, I trust she will accept my invitation to come on my channel to tell me what this all means. This officially makes me a pantheistic, panentheist, panpsychist, monotheist. Technically, it was only through the worship of an impersonal God that I was able to deduce this depiction of the periodic table in its true form. Thus, my knowledge is evidence in support of the utility of the belief in an impersonal God. Next, we'll go to the pragmatic reasons why an impersonal God is a superior belief. Okay, this is getting to the region of my being able to understand the words. The main reason why God should be viewed as impersonal is because attempting to personalize something that is not necessarily personal will impede somebody's ability to observe its true nature. Can God's nature be observed when so many doubt his existence? If you presume God is impersonal and later determine God to be personal based on your validated evidence, you can easily change your mind. I don't know what that means. Our minds, being personal themselves, recognize personal entities far more easily than impersonal ones. I don't know what that means. In fact, some people go as far as to say that an impersonal God is inconceivable. If you instead presume, she should give examples. If you instead presume God is personal, you will have no way of understanding what it means for God to be impersonal and thus unable to accept this truth even if it is proven. I don't know what any of this means. The concept of God introduces a hard limit to our idealism. The concept of God introduces a hard limit to our idealism. The personality, I don't know what that means either. The personality of God is the supreme ideal, and there's nothing we can conceive of which is beyond that. I don't know what that means. By imagining an impersonal God, the perceiver can start to think beyond the confines of their subjective ego. I don't know what that means. This process of mind expansion from entirely personal to part personal and part impersonal is integral to the practice of meditation, which is a necessity for the manifestation of the perfecting of consciousness or enlightenment. And this is certainly a desired sociological effect, because enlightenment is the cessation of suffering. Oh my God. Societies that had a concept of an impersonal God have made more significant contributions to philosophy and science than those that did not. Really, who, what, how, not explained. Personalizing God leads to numerous undesirable consequences such as supremacism, imperialism, and hatred of God, because God's personality is not manifesting the way you would like you to, because God does not have a human personality, and ultimately atheism. We cannot change the nature of God because God is unchanging. Well, obviously not. If we accept God as personal, we will always be hindered by a personal ego in our search for God. I don't know what that means. However, if we accept God is impersonal, we open ourselves up to true realizations about the nature of reality and causality. Don't know what any of this means. So I say, you'll be able to know what I'm saying. So that's my rebuttal to Jen's claim that God is impersonal. Jen has stated a number of very complicated ideas that I do not believe many people understand. I did not believe that the moderator herself understands all her talk about the periodic table and the symmetry of God and how the periodic table is evidence of God's beauty and perfection. These are unusual views, not explicable within the time allotted, which is only 7 minutes. I have been told that I am to ignore the things that are that the things that cannot be understood by either the moderator or myself, and I only concentrate on what I do understand and manage to note down in the very brief speech that 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 they are merely assertions. They are merely assertions as far as I can tell. So, Jen claims that there is utility in a personal God, and as far as I can tell, did not explain the reasons. She said that a personal God causes war and imperialism and death and destruction, and this is not understood. I cannot rebut them in the sense that I cannot undermine the reasons because I have not been given reasons for her claims. So it is actually very difficult for me to operate under these very difficult conditions when I don't even understand the points that are being made and are not allowed to ask questions about the conclusions that she bases her arguments on. It's not clear why a personal God is destructive, bringing war and imperialism, and it is not clear why the impersonal God is better than the personal God, and why it would prevent war and destruction. I don't quite see why the periodic table has to do with the impersonal God, apart from the fact that the periodic table is not expected to care about us personally. I cannot see the reasoning behind it, and if the moderator sees the reasoning on which Jen's arguments are based, I will be very grateful for the moderator's explanation of what Jen has said. There's something about mass being eternal that she said. There's the mass distribution of the universe. These are all very technical issues which are not understood by the average person, and for some reason I'm expected to understand all these questions, which, when previously I haven't been able to understand them myself after many hours of asking Jen on my YouTube channel. I think at the very least the terms of what Jen is relying on should be understandable to at least the moderator. I have no more to say on this matter other than I fail to understand Jen's position, and I can't be expected to rebut something I can't understand using the reasonings that are not explained properly. But I'm happy to proceed with it and put up my case for a personal God. But that's the extent of the rebuttal I can do when I understand so little of what Jen is relying on. So I think you can see that I'm using up my time to say, I don't know what the hell Jen's on about. That much is clear. But according to the moderator, she said, I lost my train of thought. On what matter did I lose my train of thought, Erica? I was quite deliberately pointing out that I didn't know what the hell Jen was on about and making the point that neither did the moderator. This should remind her that she said she would ask questions if she didn't understand anything. If she just didn't understand the thing. So she didn't even ask one question. If you go, if you listen to the debate, you'll know that she asked me, because just before I started, I said, before the debate I started, I expressed my concerns to her, and she assured me that she would ask a question if she didn't understand. But did she, hell? Yeah. So we get this kind of stuff where people make promises they don't keep, and perhaps never intended to keep. So you can draw a line under all that for the moment and just consider my case for a personal God. I like to think that what I say is easily understandable, and if it's not, please ask me in the chat what I could possibly mean. So I begin. God is a personal God because we have been told that he is a personal God, or that the overwhelming majority of the opinion of God in the Abrahamic sense is a personal God. We can go to the Hindu system where its God is also considered to be personal. This is something that is generally agreed on in Hindu circles, i.e. that God is personal. Jainism also explicitly states that all the gods in Jainism are personal. Now we come to the Abrahamic God. It's certainly true that Christians worship through Christ and they pray to Christ, and Christ is supposed to intercede between themselves and God. Before that, it was Mary, so you know that for Christians it's very, very personal indeed. As for Islam, again, this perception of God is that it's personal. Because in some verses in the Quran, there is talk of God being a friend, or that was said in the Penguin N.J. Darwood translation. I go on to say, as for Jews, they have a prohibition against anthropomorphizing the nature of God. For those of you who don't know this word, it means investing human qualities in a god, in a deity. As for Jews, they have a prohibition against anthropomorphizing the nature of God, because what they believe in God is that he is pure spirit, is immaterial, and is outside the universe after having created it. He is also considered to be omnipotent, that is capable of doing anything and beyond human comprehension. The idea is that he knows the hearts and minds of those who believe in him and submit to him. So, Jews acknowledge the personal nature of their God and are encouraged as worshippers to have a personal relationship with God in order to more effectively follow his laws. We can assume that if a perfectly moral God exists, as the Abrahamic God is said to be, this means we are also expected to obey his laws. We can only obey his laws if we know what they are and have a personal relationship in which to frame our requests, our prayers, or prayers in terms of whether we have obeyed his laws or not. I suppose most people will only pray to God not out of gratitude for being alive, but out of habit. But if they want something, they will ask God to grant them success in, for example, business and romantic endeavors, etc. They would be referring to their previous behavior on how well or how badly they followed his rules, and in so doing, they will have a life that is examined, in that they will have a conscience that tells them whether they deserve to have their prayers answered or not. So, a murderer might be saying, well, he might wish for success in love or success in business, but if he did believe in God, he would know that he had done a terrible thing because he'd infringed against the commandment forbidding murder. So, he wouldn't have the audacity to ask God to grant him his prayers, presumably. This is what centers the individual onto a path of morality and awareness of God's laws. I continue. I simply do not see how worshipping an impersonal deity said to not care about whether we live or die is going to help us be morally centered. It seems to me a waste of time, a waste of good divine resources. Believing God is personal. If we choose to believe in God in this way, would make us lead better lives, be better people, and enjoy the spirituality that we would enjoy in having this personal relationship with God. But, so basically, spirituality is the reward we get when we know that we have been obeying the rules. I do not know how Jen prays to God, but I can imagine it can only be an impersonal and automatic repetition of formulaic prayers, which is not so much about examining one's life and one's past and one's conscience, but leading to very little self-examination. For this reason, I think believing in a personal God actually helps us to cultivate a sense of conscience and awareness of his laws, and awareness of how well or how badly we are obeying them. I do not quite see how believing in an impersonal God would help keep the world a peaceable place. Obviously, if we as individuals are expected to follow God's laws, we as nations are also expected to follow God's laws, and there are rules of warfare that are in Scripture in the Old Testament and the Quran. War is inevitable and must be regulated in its conduct, the conduct of which is stated in Scripture. I think it would be better for us to limit ourselves in whatever atrocities we would commit on conquered peoples, rather than do as our inclination dictates or expediency dictates. And for this reason, rules written down and sanctified by tradition and time would be more helpful in this regard than an impersonal God that left no scripture. May I remind you that Jen only refers to her oral tradition, so she won't tell us what the rules are. She might say, read my blog, if you asked her about anything, but she won't even tell you which post she is referring to. I don't think she really intends for us to read her blog anyway. She wants us to give up and only tune in to her next stream to learn what she might be saying next, which will be more of the same gibberish. Now, I've spoken twice, and according to the rules of this rigged debate, those two opportunities for speaking are, well, the only two opportunities I will have for speaking. So, Jen has the last word. And then you will soon see that she can say anything she likes in her rebuttal, and I won't have the opportunity of rebutting it or questioning it. No points of information was allowed. No points of misrepresentation was allowed. I specifically asked, and she said no. So, Jen has a final word, and she says, Claire has indicated that she doesn't understand how an impersonal God can lead to a peaceful situation, which is ironic because the world has been plagued by non-stop brutal conflict and war since the advent of the expansion of the personal Abrahamic God construct. So we certainly have evidence for a personal God causing war and destruction. Maybe it is less clear how to get evidence on how an impersonal God creates more peace, but let's leave that for now and just address Claire's arguments. So she's basically saying that she cannot address my criticism. And my criticism is that I don't know. I don't see the connection between an impersonal God and less brutal conflict in war. And I don't see how this can be measured. That was what my problem was. But no, she doesn't have to deal with it. Jen goes on to say, so she opened with an ad populum fallacy, but because, okay, the ad populum fallacy is basically that most people who believe in a unique God believe him to be personal. Well, we have to go by the majority in this case, don't we? Or if Jen wants to go against that, she has to prove some reason to do so. Because obviously a personal God is more powerful and more useful to us than an impersonal God. And obviously we should worship the most powerful God that we can conceive of, and the Abrahamic God is the most powerful God we can conceive of, because he knows our hearts and minds, while Jen's doesn't give a damn about what we think or what our opinion is. Let me begin her sentence again. So, she opened with an ad populum fallacy, but because most people believe in a personal God because they are part of the Abrahamic religions, therefore this is somehow an indication of its validity. She's basically saying she doesn't give a damn what adherents of the Abrahamic faith think. She is right. And she doesn't have to prove it. Yeah, that's how she rolls. I don't think this She continues, I don't think this is a fair argument because the behavior of many of these people suggests that they do not have a very strong moral high ground. So she's going on to say that adherents of the Abrahamic faiths have lower standards of morality than Hindus and Buddhists. How can she measure it? How would she know? I actually tried to raise the question of it in the post-debate stream, but maybe you should listen to how she and Duvet shouted me down. And they only allowed me to make that point when I refused to go, until I'd been allowed to make it. 1 whole hour of being barracked and interrupted and spoken over. But that's the rules of natural justice by Jen and Co. What will she do to you when she has her theocracy, run by her and her cronies? God knows. She continues, many scholars have indeed argued for an impersonal God within the Indian traditions. Which scholars? She doesn't say. However, I do not think this is a viable line of interrogation because I do not feel that Westerners can really distinguish between the personal and impersonal God concepts. We're too fucking stupid. These are Hindu-type philosophies, but more accurately are described as Vedic in origin, so we'll leave that. Yeah, we're too stupid and she's too lazy to explain it to us. But she still wins the debate. She goes on to say, Claire does not appear to mount much of a defense for a personal God, aside from appeals to utilitarianism. She also claims that she also relies on the usefulness of the impersonal God. So basically, I'm saying the personal God is useful, and she's also saying the impersonal God is more useful. So she's relying on the same ground of utility. Because obviously she's saying the impersonal God is more useful because it encourages more morality. So, one rule For her, she's allowed to rely on arguments for utility, but I am not. And of course, she wins the argument, and her cronies agree that she has won the argument. That's how they roll. These mediocrities, these yes men and yes women. That's how they roll. Jen continues. Her arguments are mere justification for the existence of this imperialist, supremacist, dogmatic cult, politically expanding to the ends of the earth. But I ask, what about the ignoble wars that brought about untold suffering among numerous people simply for being idolaters when propagators of these wars can just find idolaters anything they want? I don't know what she means by ignoble wars. I don't know about this untold suffering, about these numerous people. I don't know who these numerous people are. Was war waged on them because they were idolaters? No examples are cited. So, Jen betrays a visceral hatred of the Abrahamic faiths. She does not make clear what war casualties of which wars she is referring to. She ignores the fact that idolaters go to war with each other. She doesn't explain what ignoble wars are. So she's thinking wars can be noble, right? She continues. What about all the imperialism which Claire has many times defended as being a good thing? Well, I don't mind admitting that I say all great civilizations are great empires, and all great empires are great nations. I don't think anyone would deny that. So she continues, I don't think that's very wise, because we live on a finite surface and we cannot expand on in perpetuity upon the surface. We must learn to live there as peaceably as possible. Claire has insisted that Jews have a personal God, but if that is the case, how could this God have chosen them to be his people? She's showing animosity. Or, well, okay, I don't want to put it as highly as that, but she's one of those people who deny the identity of Jews as God's chosen people. We know the people who do that. They are anti-Semites. After all, what could be more insulting than to take your identity away? These nationalists know that. That's what they're complaining about. They're complaining that their identity has been taken away by their matriarchal government. And so this is what they want to do to the Jews. They say that the Jews are not God's chosen people, even though their scripture says so. So we know that the Catholic Church did that to the Jews. And we know how anti-Semitic the Catholic Church once was, don't we? About the blood libel, which Jen says she's prepared to give credence to. That link, that stream, was deleted, but she never withdrew that statement. Not as far as I know, anyway. The ability She continues, to make a choice implies one can change, and an impersonal God would be unchanging, because the capacity to change or to change one's mind or to make a choice is a personal thing. I don't know what that means. Moreover, the personality of this entity appears to change quite drastically from the Old Testament to the New. I can understand. I think she means the Jewish God and the Christian God is different because in the New Testament, Christ becomes God. No answers regarding this dramatic shift in personality are forthcoming from Claire. Well, did she even ask me the question? So she cleverly implies that I didn't answer the question when she never asked it. But then my two opportunities to speak have come and gone. I will not be given the chance to address any of her points because my opportunities to speak have gone. That's how the rules are rigged. So, Claire suggested that an impersonal God will not bring about morality, but Claire is actually just deflecting from the fact that her personal God has never brought about morality, nor people obeying their own rules for any reason other than selfish materialism. And it appears that she has failed to grasp the totality of the argument that is being made here. She can say anything she likes about me, and I won't have the chance to address them. You see, this is how she rolls. This is how she and Duvid and her cronies roll. Here's the final paragraph. Claire has the audacity to assert that I have not examined myself, but how else did I find that the mind is a quantum computer if not through self-inquiry? I must have had a pretty good mind to be able to figure out the source of its consciousness and the nature of its consciousness. I've done what no one else has done before me. I've proven beyond doubt, beyond a shadow of a doubt, what happens after my death. Thus, I must have spent a large part of my life doing self-inquiry, so I wonder why Claire is attempting to undermine me in this fashion when the position can be so easily defeated. I would like to thank you all for coming to this debate and apologize for the lateness, and most of all, thank the moderator for her patience and wisdom guiding us forward in this debate. Yeah, the moderator. Thank you, moderator, for saying you would stop Jen if you didn't understand anything and not doing it. Great. That's your wisdom. I get it. And then, inexplicably, she says, I hope that the material covered here hasn't been too upsetting for people. Jay is back in the chat again. A simple question. Connaught won the debate. Why? Yes, it is hot here. But then, I know that you don't care about the rules, you don't care about what constitutes a valid argument, but then I should point out, if it needs pointing out, that Jay Walker is not an educated man. So he wouldn't know what a valid argument means anyway. Let me just reread that email in which he thought he was answering my question. So I say to him, I'm not asking you to agree with me about who won the argument between Connox and John Vance. I'm just asking you to give me a reason for your decision. Is this too much to ask? And then he says, I've already done this. And I ask, what was your answer? And then he says, that John Flat therefore lost, Connox stayed cool and won. So this is it. He actually thinks that your demeanor when you are a barefaced liar, a sociopath, a psychopath, who can act, who can sort of murder 10 people and just not really care. He wins the argument, even if his arguments are shit. He wins the argument. So Jay would like to live in a country where you go to court, you pay your lawyer, the judge decides who wins the argument, who wins the case, who wins the claim, and he doesn't have to give a reason. Yeah, Jay, this is your moral sewer that you want to live in, right? You just hire the prettiest lawyer, the most seductive lawyer. She only has to flutter her eyelashes at the judge, and then the judge doesn't have to give a reason about why he is awarding damages against you if you were to go to court, Jay. This is the kind of society you are happy to live in, and that's why your country has the morals of a sewer, and you're saying you don't care. So after he said that it's demeanor, that's everything, I said, you're not getting it. Answer my questions. What were Connox and John arguing about? Question number 1. Question number 2. What was John's argument? 3. What was Connox's argument? 4. Who used the winning argument? 5. Why was it the winning argument? And then he says, I'm sorry you feel this way, and there's obviously nothing I can do about it. Is it obvious? Is there nothing he can do about it? He could just answer my questions. But he won't. Is it because he's some sort of lazy fat fuck? As well as a bonehead? He continues, as you know, I'm not the type of guy who will be blackmailed. If I were to bend to your demands, then I'm going against my principles. What fucking principles? We have spoken about the nastiest thing a person can do is to try to get a person to do this. What fucking principles have you got? If you won't answer a simple question, I'm not asking you to agree with me, Jay. I'm asking you why you thought Connox won the argument. Why won't you do that? He continues, so I'm happy to let you go. Well, there we are. Oh, you want me to read the bit about the AA? Great. I was just protecting you. Here we go. So I'm happy to let you go. We have a thing in AA which is about not going where we are not wanted. It works. So I'm not asking you to go where you're not wanted. I'm just asking you to answer the question. I'm asking you for a reason for your fucking stupid decision. Or maybe it's not. Why don't you say what you think is the argument? There is no next bit. That's what the email says. I've read it all. But that's all you need to know about the kind of people I'm dealing with, who have no conception of rational argument, valid arguments, and they are, I would say, 90% of the voting public. You getting it now? They can't even reason, and when you ask them, they actually tell you that they don't have to answer your question. You can cut and paste whatever you like here. Fuck you, Jaywalker. I don't want to hear from you if you can't answer my question. Obviously, I said, don't expect to hear from me again until you answer the question. And I don't expect you to hear from you again because you are refusing to answer my question. I'm not manipulating you. I'm making the point that stupid fat fucks like you don't get valid arguments. And what is worse, people like Jen Sharf don't give a damn about it either, as long as they can do what they want and manipulate their entourage into agreeing with them, whatever they say. Now, on the question of a valid argument, I've read out the whole debate. Did you spot a single valid argument in Jen's two speeches? They were merely assertions that, let me try and remember. They were assertions that God exists because the universe exists, and that God is impersonal, and that an impersonal God would encourage more morality than an impersonal God. And when I tried to ask her why in the streams subsequent to the debate, she made sure that everyone talked over me and David, the Jew, will always be, well, we know what he's doing. We know that he will never say anything to offend Jen because he won't get on his show, on her show again. Week in Review is a regular Sunday treat for you all. Jen allows him to dominate her streams. He sings songs and reads. He reads long, boring books of Reform rabbis. What else is he allowed to do? He's allowed to wrap parcels while the stream's going on. And when people are trying to talk about sensible things, he interrupts to talk about parcel wrapping. He clearly doesn't respect the medium, but Jen allows this. I think they kind of validate each other in a sense that Duvet is her protection, I think, for against people accusing her of anti-Semitism, and David likes the female validation, the fact that he's a regular on her show. You can see the bargain that they have struck with each other. But David actually incites more hatred against Jews than any other Jew I've known. He actually enjoys going on these alt-right streams saying he would actively support more immigration. This is the kind of Jew he is. I know that such a Jew, a Hare Krishna Jew, cannot be a Jew in good standing with his community. But there we are, we have this unholy alliance. I did offer to stream with her, but she's not having any of it. She prefers her yes men and her yes women who will unquestioningly support whatever she does, irrespective of the valid argument, the total absence of a valid argument. So these would be retards like Gandalf. Well, it's particularly unforgivable because he says he's been to an Ivy League university, but he doesn't seem to know what a valid argument is and doesn't care. Who else? The moderator who broke a promise to me, culture bearer. I think he might have been to university, I don't know. And there we have it. We have the West that is governed by Jen's rules. Jen's rules. No, I should say Jen's rules rule. Claire's rules don't. Claire's rules are truth, logic, and morality. But I'm sure most of you will be happy to go by Jen's version of truth, logic, and morality, and that means Jay is happy to go over to her side because he doesn't see the point in the rules. It's all emotion for him. If he gets the impression that someone won the argument, then they won the argument. It doesn't matter if he can't remember what the argument was about or why the argument that was supposed to win the argument won. He doesn't give a damn. Impressions is all that matters to the uneducated and apparently the feminine. Jay and Jen deserve each other. In fact, all of you Westerners who complain about Jews and Muslims all the time deserve the shit show of your government because you still can't be made to understand that the rules matter. Because what? You can't eat them, you can't wear them, you can't fuck them, and so they don't matter. They don't give you pleasure, so they don't matter. Yeah, Aaron, thanks. It would have been nice to discuss it with you, but maybe the gods are against us. Yeah, Jay, fuck off to Jen. You'll be happier with her. because you don't care about the rules, you don't understand the rules, you don't want to know about the rules. You're too cool for rules. Jen is cool. Jen and you will be so cool together. Fuck off, Jay Walker. Fuck off to Jen Charles.